Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's advanced English listening practice. Well, the topic is the art of telling a good story in English.
It's great to be diving into this. I think for our advanced learners, this is where we really move past the nuts and bolts, the grammar drills and vocab lists.
Yeah, right.
Our mission today is really to analyze and distill what makes a narrative work. We're aiming to give you a shortcut, in a way, how to turn, say, an everyday thing that happened to you, or even dry corporate data.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Into something truly compelling, polished, something people remember, whether you're in a job interview and a presentation or, just talking to people.
That distinction you made is so important. Going from just a simple anecdote to a polished tale, it's crucial, especially in those high-stakes situations where you have to be impactful and fast. When we talk about this, I always think of that, that really primal image, like people sitting around a campfire. And suddenly, one person leans in and says something like, "You're not going to believe how my day started."
Yeah.
And in that moment, everyone just stops. They're captivated. That's the goal, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and that feeling is universal. It shows why storytelling is so much more than just language skill. It's kind of like the human operating system for conveying complex ideas, building rapport, evoking emotion.
A human operating system. I like that.
And English, with its huge vocabulary and flexible grammar, it gives you a particularly powerful canvas for this. So for advanced speakers, it's not about fluency anymore. It's about impact. Today, we're unlocking the tools to get you from being just technically correct to being narratively compelling.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's start by unpacking why this skill is so useful, especially outside of, just telling fun stories.
Right.
Our analysis shows that in the professional world in business, in academia, a good story isn't just a bit of decoration. It's a strategic tool. It's for persuasion, for influence.
Absolutely. Think about a typical business meeting. You're trying to introduce some radical new idea.
Okay.
You could, show 30 minutes of dense PowerPoint slides full of data.
Yeah.
And people might nod along. They might get it intellectually, but will they feel it? Probably not.
It won't stick.
Exactly. Or you could tell a story. You could talk about a client from 5 years ago who had the exact same problem. You detailed the chaos they were in. That's the setup. Then the risky decision they made. That's the conflict. And then the surprising success that came out of it, the resolution. Suddenly, that abstract strategy is real. It's human. You get emotional buy-in, which is so much more powerful than just intellectual agreement.
And that loops back to the storyteller, too. It's not just about persuading others. Mastering this gives you a huge psychological boost. I think this is especially true for advanced English learners. Once you know you can structure a spontaneous 2-minute story perfectly, that confidence is immense. It helps you manage the stress of trying to find the right words in a job interview or something.
That structural confidence is everything, and there's a deep psychological reason for it. When you share a compelling story, especially one about, say, overcoming a failure, you're building instant credibility, you're sharing a vulnerability, but also the wisdom that came from it. And then there's the neuroscience, which is it's unequivocal on this.
Okay, I was hoping you'd bring this up.
When we hear facts, just a couple parts of our brain light up. The language processing centers, Wernicke's and Broca's areas.
Right, the logical parts.
But when we listen to a story, the brain acts as if it's actually experiencing the events.
Oh, it's not passive listening?
Not at all. It's fascinating, really. If I tell a story about a character running, the motor cortex in your brain, the part that controls your own physical running, it activates. If I describe the bitter aroma of stale coffee, your olfactory centers light up.
Wow, so you're basically creating a virtual reality experience in someone's mind.
That is a perfect way to put it. And that multi-region activation is why stories are so much more memorable. Some studies say up to 22 times more memorable than just facts alone. Stories create these sticky, high-fidelity memories. They anchor your message.
Memorability as the key performance indicator. That makes perfect sense. If you want your lesson or your sales pitch or your personal brand to stick, you have to wrap it in a story. And this has only gotten more important in, the digital age, where attention is so scarce.
It's the only thing that cuts through the noise. Look at any viral video or popular blog post. Almost all of them have a clear narrative arc, right? Setup, conflict, resolution, sometimes in less than 60 seconds. And to do that well in English, you have to leverage the language's strength. The massive vocabulary lets you be so precise, and the flexible grammar is perfect for controlling the pace and the drama.
That idea of rhythmic control is so key. It's not about just knowing more words. It's about knowing which word to use and in which kind of sentence to get the right effect.
Exactly.
And of course, we can't ignore the cultural context behind English storytelling.
No, you can't. It's this complex tapestry. You have the grand conflicts from Shakespeare, which teaches about universal themes. You have the tension and plotting from modern thrillers, which teach suspense. And then, really importantly, you have the authenticity and heart from things like TED Talks.
Right. Those short, powerful personal narratives.
Yes. They combine very technical ideas with really accessible emotions. So mastering this skill means you're connecting your own story to this incredibly rich tradition of communication.
So really good English storytelling is about creating a shared experience that makes an interaction meaningful, not just transactional.
Well said.
Okay, so with the why established, let's get into the how. What are the actual building blocks?
Right. So we've moved from the strategy to the architecture. Every great story is built on 5 core elements. If you can internalize these, your skill level will just leap forward.
And the first, which is probably the most important, is characters, the narrative's heart. You have to give the audience someone to connect with. And they can't be flat. They need to feel real, multidimensional.
This is where that golden rule comes in. Showing versus telling. Telling is easy. He was anxious. It's just information. Showing is about illustration. You make the audience do the work. So instead of, she was wealthy, you could say, yeah, I don't know. She fiddled with a diamond cuff on her wrist, a nervous habit that cost more than my car.
Right. That image is immediate, and it tells us so much more. It shows us her wealth, her nervousness, and it even gives a sense of the narrator's perspective.
Exactly. And for the protagonist, they must have clear goals, they need to have flaws, that's crucial for relatability, and they have to show growth. They can't be the same person at the end of the story.
And that growth usually comes from some kind of opposition, the antagonist.
It has to.
Yeah.
But in the stories we tell every day in our professional lives, the antagonist isn't usually a villain. It can be an external force, like a market crash. But often, the most compelling antagonist is internal. It's self-doubt, imposter syndrome, the fear you feel when you're trying to master a new skill, like a language. Frame that internal struggle as the enemy, and your story becomes instantly relatable to almost everyone.
So what are some of the advanced language choices we can use here to really bring characters to life?
We need to go beyond just finding synonyms for said. We need precision. Use verbs that carry emotion with the action, so someone doesn't just walk. Maybe they trudged, which implies exhaustion, or they strolled, which implies the relaxed, or they darted, which implies panic.
I see. The verb does the heavy lifting.
Yes. And the dialogue has to feel authentic. You use idioms, you use slang, maybe even professional jargon if it's right for the audience, saying, we are pivoting hard right now in a business story. It just lands with more urgency and authenticity.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move to the second element, setting context and immersion. This often feels like the first thing to cut when you're trying to be brief.
And that's often a mistake. The setting is the container for the action. It grounds the story. You use descriptive language to pull the audience into that specific time and place. Instead of, it was a cold morning, you immerse them. The air tasted like steel, and the sunrise was just a pale smudge behind the smog.
That's much more evocative.
The setting can also raise the stakes. A dark alley automatically adds tension. Even a tiny anecdote is better with a quick sketch of the setting. Something like, we were in this cramped corner office and the fluorescent lights were humming louder than my own thoughts.
Okay, so element 3 is plot sequence and pacing. This is the skeleton of the story.
It's the blueprint, yeah. What happens and why it happens. We all know the classic structure, beginning, middle, and end, or, setup, rising action, climax, and resolution. For an oral storyteller, the advanced skill here is controlling the pace. And you do that by varying your sentences. Short, punchy sentences for tension. He ran, the clock ticked, he couldn't make it.
Right, creates a very staccato, anxious feeling.
Yes. And then you use longer, more complex sentences for description to slow things down and build a mood.
And what kicks the whole plot into motion?
It has to have an inciting incident, the moment the normal world breaks. That event leads to the rising action, where the stakes get higher and higher until you hit the climax, the peak moment of tension. And the resolution that follows can't just be a return to normal. There has to be a change, an insight. The character has learned something. A static story is a boring story.
Which brings us perfectly to element 4. Conflict, the engine of engagement. You said this is non-negotiable.
Conflict is the fuel. Without it, the listener has no reason to care what happens next. And as we said, it can be external, person versus person, or internal, Let's focus on that internal conflict again. In a professional story, the conflict isn't just that the project was hard. The real conflict is the project manager's internal battle with her fear of delegating. The resolution is her learning to trust her team. That's a story about growth.
There's that famous advice for writers: be cruel to your characters. It sounds harsh, but it's about forcing them into situations that reveal who they really are.
It's exactly that. If the hero wins easily, of course. The obstacle is what gives them a chance to show their courage or their cleverness or their resilience. The struggle makes the victory satisfying.
Right.
Think about a startup pitch story. The conflict isn't just that they need money. The real story is the programmer who had to stay up all night fixing a catastrophic bug before the big meeting, fighting off exhaustion and self-doubt. The success feels earned because they overcame that personal hell to get there.
And the final pillar, number 5, is theme, the deeper message, the so what of the story.
The theme is the central idea. Perseverance pays off, or collaboration leads to innovation. But, and this is critical, you can't just state the theme. That's a lecture, not a story. It has to be woven in subtly. The theme is proven by the character's actions and the plot's outcome. The story is the evidence for the theme.
Characters, setting, plot, conflict, and theme. Okay, we have the 5 pillars down. So let's move into the practical application. How do we actually build a story using these?
Right. Let's go from theory to a step-by-step process. This is about giving our listeners concrete tools they can use immediately.
And step 1 is choosing your story wisely. It has to fit the audience and your purpose. A story about resilience is great for a job interview, maybe not so much at a party.
You have to ask yourself 2 questions before you start. What emotion do I want to leave them with, and what insight should they take away? A great tool for this is what we call the heart map technique.
A heart map?
Yeah. It's a brainstorming exercise. You list, say, 5 to 10 things that really matter to you: your career, a hobby, a key relationship. And next to each one, you jot down moments that involved a significant change, an emotional transformation.
That focus on change is the key, isn't it? A story about winning isn't as good as a story about almost failing and what you learned from that.
Precisely. The audience connects with the struggle, not just the victory. So, on your heart map, you're not looking for the time you got a promotion. You're looking for the time you got lost on a solo trip, were forced to ask for help, and ended up making a lifelong friend. That's a story about adaptability and human connection. It has stakes.
Once you've found that moment, that story, we move to step 2, shaping and structure using the story spine. This sounds like a great framework for keeping things focused, especially when you're speaking off the cuff.
It's incredibly valuable. It forces you to hit all the essential beats of a narrative. It goes like this. Once upon a time, that's your setup. For example, once upon a time, I was a junior analyst terrified of public speaking.
Okay.
Every day. This establishes the normal routine. Every day, I would find excuses to avoid presenting in meetings.
But one day,
Yeah.
the inciting incident. But one day, my boss got sick and I had to present our team's project to the entire department.
Exactly. Then, because of that, this is the rising action, you can repeat it. Because of that, I stayed up all night practicing. Because of that, I almost called in sick myself.
Until finally, climax. Until finally, I stood up there, my hand shaking, and I delivered the presentation.
And to finish. And ever since then, the resolution, the new normal, and ever since then, while I still get nervous, I know I have the ability to face that fear.
The beauty of that spine is that it forces you to be concise. It acts like a magnet for only the relevant details. Now, for an advanced speaker, flowing between those points in natural English is the real challenge.
It is, and that's where you use sophisticated transitions. You move beyond first, next, then thinking. You use phrases that show complex relationships like against this backdrop, or consequently, or in a surprising turn of events. They guide the listener.
Let's really dig into step 3, elevating stories with specific English language techniques. This is what our listeners are here for.
Okay. Let's start again with vocabulary nuance, but go deeper. It's not just finding a better verb, it's finding the verb with the perfect emotional texture. If your character is walking because they're sad, you wouldn't say they strolled, you'd say they wandered or drifted. Those words carry the weight of that sadness.
And what about sentence structure? Let's talk about grammar for pacing and emphasis. This is where advanced learners can really shine.
Absolutely. The simple past tense gets the job done, but advanced grammar controls the drama. Take a technique like inversion. Instead of saying, I had never seen such a disaster, which is fine, use inversion for emphasis. Never had I seen such a disaster. It immediately signals to the listener that this is a moment of huge significance.
It makes you slow down and pay attention.
Yes. And you can also use things like participles. Having reviewed the data 3 times, she still couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
That structure lets you pack in context without breaking the main flow of the action. It's more efficient, more elegant.
And what about figurative language? We should probably push beyond just metaphors and similes.
We should. Let's talk about something like metonymy. That's where you refer to something by using a closely associated concept. Instead of, the government made a decision, you could say, the Crown made a decision, or Washington made a decision. It adds a layer of specific cultural or political texture instantly.
It's a kind of powerful shorthand.
A very powerful one.
And for dialogue clarity, it has to sound like real people talking.
Which means it's often messy, use contractions, use sentence fragments. Hey, careful is much more effective than he told her to be careful. It puts you right in the moment. And good dialogue uses subtext. What's not being said is often more important than what is.
And finally, let's come back to sensory detail focus, but with the goal of total cognitive immersion.
You want the listener to feel like they are there. Don't just say the room was tense. Describe it. The only sound in the boardroom was the quiet, rhythmic tapping of the CEO's pen against the oak table. That one sound says more about the tension in the room than any adjective could. You have to hit all 5 senses. That's what separates a good story from a great one.
Okay, so we've built the story, now we have to deliver it.
Exactly. We're moving from the page to the stage, so to speak. This is all about the performance. How do you turn a well-structured story into a captivating experience?
It has to start with knowing your audience. This seems obvious, but for advanced speakers in global settings, it's about more than just the topic. It's about cultural nuance.
That is the critical layer.
Yeah.
You have to anticipate where an idiom or a joke might not land. If you're talking to engineers, you can use technical jargon to build credibility. If you're talking to a general audience, that same jargon will alienate them. Your language, your pacing, your humor, it all has to be tailored.
And once you know who you're talking to, you need the early hook. In a world of short attention spans, the first few seconds are everything.
They're absolutely everything. You cannot start with, today I'm going to tell you a story about teamwork. Everyone will tune out. You have to drop them right into the middle of the action or the central question. Start with something like, the first time I was truly terrified at work, it started with a single, unopened email. Now the audience has questions. What was in the email? Why was it terrifying? They have to listen to find out.
And we come back to show, don't tell mastery. But in delivery, this is about more than just words. It's your voice, your body language.
Yes, you're painting pictures with sound. Instead of saying she was angry, describe her actions and let your voice match that energy. Her jaw tightened, her knuckles went white as she gripped the edge of the desk. And maybe your own voice gets a little quieter, a little more intense. That engages the listener's imagination so much more.
So to keep them engaged, you need suspense and emotion. How can we use the structure of English to build that tension?
One great technique is foreshadowing. You hint at what's to come without giving it away. You can use a clause like, if I had only known then what that simple decision would lead to. It creates suspense. You also connect emotionally by tapping into universal feelings. Everyone knows what it feels like to be an outsider, or to feel proud, or to be disappointed.
And don't forget to use twists, or a bit of irony or humor. It rewards the audience for paying attention.
But underlying all of this, the delivery has to feel real. Let's talk about authenticity and focus.
Authenticity is key. The best stories come from genuine experience. The audience can tell when you're being real. But, and this is a big, but authenticity is not an excuse for rambling. You have to be ruthless. The structural work we talked about earlier, the story spine, that's your tool for this. If a detail doesn't serve the plot or the theme, it has to go. Advanced storytelling is about economy of words for maximum impact.
And let's get into some practical tips. Delivery and reflection. What can people actually do to practice this?
First, rehearse out loud. And even better, record yourself. When you listen back, pay attention to your pacing. Where do you speed up? Where do you drag? Listen for your tone. Does it match the emotion of the story? During the actual delivery, use eye contact, use natural gestures, and vary your voice. A whisper can be more powerful than a shout.
And the work isn't done when the story is over.
Not at all. The final step is always reflect and refine. Think about how it landed. Did people laugh at the funny part? Did they lean in during the suspenseful part? Or did they check their phones? Use that feedback. A story is a living thing. It's meant to be told and retold, polished a little more each time.
Okay, this brings us to a really important section. Let's talk about the common mistakes, the pitfalls that can trip up even advanced speakers.
Yes, let's look at the barriers. The first, and maybe the biggest, is overloading with detail. The listener does not need to know what you had for breakfast on the day of the big meeting. The fix is just ruthless editing. If it doesn't push the story forward, cut it.
The second one is rambling due to lack of structure. We've all seen this. The speaker loses their own plot.
It's an organizational failure, and the audience just gets lost. The only fix is to internalize a structure, like the story spine, so that it becomes second nature. Always have a roadmap.
And we have to mention telling instead of showing again, but this time for abstract ideas.
Exactly. Don't just tell me your company has a great culture. Tell me a 2-minute story about a time an employee's personal crisis was handled with incredible compassion by their manager. That story proves the culture.
Another one is ignoring the audience's context, using jargon they don't understand or a cultural reference that doesn't translate.
It breaks the connection instantly. You always have to be asking, is this relevant and understandable to this group of people?
And for oral delivery, a monotone presentation is just deadly.
It's the story killer. If your voice is flat, the story is flat, no matter how exciting the content is. You have to practice varying your pitch, your pace, your volume. Let your voice be the soundtrack for the story.
Finally, for our specific audience, we have to mention distracting linguistic errors. Even small, consistent grammar or pronunciation mistakes can pull a listener out of the story.
It breaks the immersion. It reminds them that they're listening to a performance, not living an experience. The only solution is targeted, focused practice.
Okay, so let's give people that practice. What are some specific drills they can do?
Let's get practical. Drill 1 is the daily anecdote with focus. Take a simple event from your day making coffee, your commute. Tell it as a 1-minute story with a clear conflict and use at least 3 advanced transition words.
Drill 2, advanced story spine application. Find a news story. Give yourself 2 minutes to frame it using the story spine and consciously practice alternating short, tense sentences with longer, descriptive ones.
Drill 3, the multisensory scene challenge. Describe a complex scene, like a busy kitchen or an airport terminal. Use all 5 senses and try to incorporate at least one instance of metonymy, like referring to the chefs just as the white hats.
I like that. What about for dialogue?
Dialogue and subtext practice. Write a short conversation where one person is trying to hide something. The goal is to convey their real feelings only through hesitation, word choice, and what they don't say. Read it aloud.
And a more creative one. Rewrite historical accounts. Retell a famous event, but from the perspective of someone who was against it or who failed along the way. Use modern conversational English.
And finally, to really master tailoring, try the theme variation drill. Take one core story from your heart map. Tell it 3 times. First, to an imaginary audience of high schoolers, focusing on the theme of courage. Second, to a board of directors, focusing on calculated risk. Third, to a close friend, focusing on the personal emotional journey. Notice how your vocabulary, tone, and details change each time.
Let's really hammer this home with a clear before and after example.
Okay, the flat telling version is, I went to the office to fix the computer system. It was difficult, but I fixed it, and then I went home.
Right. It's just a list of events, no stakes, no emotion.
Now, here's the rich showing version that uses our principles. The server room was freezing. The only sound, the frantic clicking of a dying hard drive. The entire company's data was about to vanish. And the real conflict wasn't the broken machine. It was the voice in my head screaming that I wasn't qualified to fix it.
Ah, so you've established the setting, the stakes, and the internal conflict immediately.
My first attempt failed. My hands were numb from the cold or maybe the fear, but I took a deep breath and remembered a line from an old manual. I tried again. After what felt like an eternity, the frantic clicking stopped. The silence that replaced it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard.
And the resolution.
And ever since that night, when I'm facing a problem that feels too big, I remember that confidence isn't about knowing you'll succeed. It's about trying, even when you're sure you'll fail.
That's a completely different experience. It has sensory details, internal conflict, rising action, and a clear, powerful theme. It's unforgettable.
It's the difference between information and transformation. And you see these same principles at work in the greatest stories, from a classic novel to a powerful TED Talk. Studying them is the path to improving your own skills.
This has been incredibly insightful. So what's the final takeaway for our listeners?
I think the main thing is that mastering storytelling in English is a journey. It takes discovery, it takes practice, and it really takes reflection. But every step you take, defining a theme, using the story spine, choosing that one perfect verb, it all builds your ability to connect with people on a deeper level, to influence them, to inspire them.
The world is waiting to hear your perspective, your unique story. And embracing this process means that your next conversation, whether it's in a boardroom or over coffee, could be the start of something really important, the start of your legacy.
We hope this deep dive into the art of storytelling was helpful for your advanced English listening practice.
Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.